All good?
Yeah.
Well, excited to be back with you guys. Obviously, since we talked last, a lot of things have changed, not only in obviously our building, but college football has passed some new rules, some new things that really affect our recruiting numbers, our roster. So it's a work in progress, but couldn't be more excited. Actually, one of the neatest rules that came about is for our coaches to be able to work with our student athletes right now on campus. So it's really been something we've been trying to emphasize. We've taken some time from our strength coaches, which Tank doesn't love, but we've been able to be on the grass with our freshmen as they come, which has never been able to happen in the past, and to be out there with footballs and work football drills. So it's been very beneficial for us. I actually had a session today where we got to take our guys on the field for a half hour on the grass. It was really something unique and individual time with our players. It's been beneficial. Haven't really got our whole roster here yet. I would say, there's a few freshmen. Mons isn't here yet. A couple other freshmen. Donovan Leary just got here last Thursday. A couple days of work through the medical side, so he's just starting up with us right now. But for the most part, those guys have been here. Adding in a couple of grad transfers and portal transfers that haven't been here yet that by NCAA rules can't comment on some of them yet, but they'll be here hopefully. I think everybody will be in place by July 4th weekend except for maybe two guys. So those guys will get here in July and then we'll hit the ground running. As far as our roster, recruiting's been going well. I'm excited where our guys are at. We've been just that much more prepared, not only on the recruiting weekends once they get here, but all the work leading into it to get the right candidates here on campus in the month of June has been very beneficial, and I like the way our staff is working. Injury-wise, everybody's been cleared. Art Sikowski's throwing. Really the only guy that's a little bit limited is Sean Miller, who's still recovering from his shoulder injury, collarbone, but he should be back full go, ready to roll by the time camp starts. Camp this year goes back to the 110 rule, so we have 118 players on our roster, which is up a little bit for Illinois. In the past, they've only been in the 110 roster, but I've got Josh. We've been able to increase our numbers there, which gives us better walk-on opportunities. Non-scholarship players, 85 scholarship, 33 non-scholarship players, which is going to help our overall numbers as well. So with that, open up for questions.
What's the most important thing you guys are doing right now as a coaching staff between now and camp that's not recruiting related?
Roster development. There's never been a time in college football where it's more important to develop your roster than now. With the portal world, everybody always asks me, like, Coach B, do you got to re-recruit them, or how do you keep your current roster happy? I think it's by how you do your business, right? So we do a daily emphasis on fundamentals, how we approach the game, how we approach life. Talk to our guys a lot about what they're doing away from the game. On recruiting weekends, we try to incorporate as many current roster players as we possibly can, whether it be through paintball, on official visit weekends, just keep them ingrained. So I think roster development's huge, but also, we've been able to sneak the last couple of weeks here on Wyoming, on Indiana, and Virginia, our first three opponents. Virginia, even though we played them last year, very unique because they lost their entire, basically coaching staff with the transition. So you have new coordinators, new philosophies. Indiana had some transition as well, even though we didn't play them last year. They have some coaching changes, and then obviously Wyoming's a brand new opponent.
What do you think goes into you guys having successful official visit weekends?
It's probably a good question. I think every kid is uniquely different. I always tell guys in recruiting, right? Your story is unique into your name, right? Everybody has a name. Mine's Bret Bielema, right? So my story was unique to me. Some guys have a lot of offers. Some don't have many. Some have zero. Every story is a little bit different, and that's the way we approach each weekend. Just this past weekend, we had a couple of unique scenarios where maybe guys have unique academic interest, whether it be a veterinarian, right? Like, the thing that blows me away, every time we have a special interest, the cooperation on campus is like off the charts. And I think that's spearheaded by Josh, relations with Chancellor Jones. We have a vet student on campus, and from the way he's treated when he walks in that building to the time he walks out, and the effect that has in recruiting is huge. So I think that's very important. I also think that you guys know it, and we say it a lot. The family thing is something that's not just printed on a shirt, or it's not just hashtag in a tweet. I want our guys to feel it. I want our recruits to understand what we're saying. So, simple thing on Friday, we try to incorporate as much as we can with our current roster. Saturday afternoon, we invite all of our families here. So my wife, shows up with Briella and Brexley, as well as all my other coaches, right? And to see all of our coaches interact with their children, I can't tell you how much of an effect that has on parents. On Saturday night, we call it date night, right? So our wives come to dinner with us and we introduce them. And I would say going out the building, I learn a lot from our recruits on Sundays. Obviously, I interview them going out the door, where we at, how do we stand, and they give you so much valuable information, and I just regurgitate it right away to our staff.
The breakdown of the class so far, are you kind of on pace for what you want to do in terms of,
Yeah.
position-wise and all that?
It's a great question. I think because of the 85 rule, you're in an unprecedented time in college football. It's literally, I lose a guy, I can replace him that next day. Once their scholarship becomes available, we can replace them. And for that reason, with the early signing date in December,
Right.
I think you really truly got to use the number. So for instance, right now we have 15 players next fall that will be done, right?
Okay.
I can't get them another year. I could pouch them or Marcase them, but for the most part, I think my
But
number
not
is
gonna, okay.
15. It's kind of hard. But in these COVID years, like it's a little gray because guys, we have seniors, but we call them seniors with bonus, right? So they're seniors that are technically done, but they have a bonus COVID year. Whether they want to use it or not, whether we want to ask them to use it, not use it, it's just a very unusual time. So I think the number we keep going off of is 15 plus 3 plus 4, somewhere in that range that would equate our high school class. And then anything that transfers out or changes after that is your portal transfers.
How do you make sure with the 85 and no limit on that walk-on, so you still have maybe a healthy walk-on program, and that could just go to a scholarship guy?
Well, it's a great point. Josh, when I first got here, we talked early on about I was a product of a walk-on program, right? And every place that he pointed out that I had been had a pretty healthy walk-on program. When I was at Iowa, when I was at Kansas State, when I was at Wisconsin, walk-ons they erase mistakes, right? So they sometimes play in front of guys that you recruit just because they had some intangibles you didn't see, right? Or they're guys that maybe have three things: undersized, underrecruited, underdeveloped, and they've changed that, right? Like maybe they're 220 and now they're 270. Look at Bryce Barnes, right? So he was a true outside linebacker type that now, close to 290 pounds and is a factor in our defensive line. So I think just sheer numbers to help you, right? Like that's why it's important for us to go from, I was trying to get to 120, we might eventually get there, but to go from 105 or 110 to 118, that's a huge deal.
The change in the scholarship things, that's something that you talked about that you thought should be in college football. Is there, since you got that, is there something else that, a change that you'd like to see come in the next year?
I have all kinds of ideas. I think that was a major step in the right direction. One of the things that I always just get frustrated as coaches is when the NCAA works under a set of rules or principles that were guidelines before we had NIL, before we had portal transfers, before we had grad transfers, before we had all these things that have changed the game, right? And we still keep working off those rules. So I think there's got to be some rules in place, especially around the portals and grad transfers that allow open recruitment as well as closing the recruitment. For instance, last year, we technically usually start school, for you guys that have been around here, we usually start school on the Tuesday after Martin Luther King Day, right? So it's a later start date than schools that are on trimesters, or some schools are literally in school the first part of January. There's a rule in play that you can have official visitors 7 days prior, all right, or a number of days prior to the start of your classes. Well, if you're starting the first or second, third or fourth day of January, that's a huge advantage versus us that start January 21st and we can't have somebody on campus until January 14th. It's not right. It's not really fair, but it's just because of what your recruiting calendar is. So that's what I was trying to get in place, is an actual set days where recruits could hit campus for everybody in the entire country and be fair. We hate to get eliminated from a kid just because our class starts later, right? There's no reason that should be in play.
Right.
That's a big one.
Can I ask you about your June camps? I'm
Yep.
unsolicited from campers that you were here and are lucky enough to be at other camps. But the instruction here was
Yep.
intense and as high as as anywhere else they've been. How much discussion goes into how you want those scheduled and how you want those run?
Yeah, so we made a conscious decision. We have 10 camp days available. Those camp days can be either on our campus or other places. So we made a decision what we're going to do as far as number of camps on campus in June and July, and then we made choices about where we would go off of that, right? Like some of you guys obviously saw us at different camps. I was actually remote a couple times. But when we have guys here on campus, I want them to have that experience. I actually had my chance come through college football because of my experience at camp. So I think I'm very still affected by that, right? I made an impression on a group of coaches when I was at the University of Iowa. Now, I wasn't good enough to get a scholarship, but I got an opportunity to be a walk-on. So I still drive off that a lot. And then we keep our numbers smaller because I want the instruction to be high. I think when I go in front of those campers and their mom and dad spend X amount of dollars to come here to camp, I want them to know the value of that. But I also really preach to kids. I think a lot of people try to use camp as an evaluation tool to decide whether or not they're going to offer. What I try to say is, hey, you come here and you find out what we're like, right? So you're an outside linebacker. We think you got a certain level of talent, but come here and find out how you're going to get instructed. Kevin Kane works with you on how he's going to coach, Seth Coleman. He's going to work with you on how he's going to coach Gabe Akis, all right, as an incoming freshman, Jared Beatty. Like, those kids see that and feel that, and I think that's important.
Coach, a lot of changes on offense. How confident are you that that's going to result
Can we get heavy?
in more points? And do you expect any growing pains early on?
I think anytime you have transition, there's going to be growing pains. I think the spring 15 practices offensively, I thought Barry Lundy did a great job of mapping out the direction we wanted to go, how we wanted to get there. I think we got collectively together and talked about the install, but I think when the fall, we'll have all of our freshmen there. It'll be the second install with this group. Actually, kind of the third, because during the summer we're getting some meetings on it. So obviously there's going to be some landmines and some unforeseen potholes that we got to go through, but the reason we made transition is to be better, and hopefully that happens.
What has Barry brought to your program?
What has Barry brought to the program?
Outside of football so far.
He's brought a lot. Anybody that's golfed with him will tell you he's a very good golfer, that lefty quarterback swing. But he's got personality, he's got charisma. I think all those offensive recruits, when they come in, I can't tell you how many of those recruits come into my office, and not only the prospect, but a mom, a dad, a brother, a cousin, a coach will be like, wow, right? Like, he gets it, he understands it. He's able to communicate on a very good, effective level, to the highest level when you want him to be, or on the lowest level what needs to be, right? And he's a, tremendous guy. I tell you, youth camp on Monday to see my coaches with their children, right? To see Barry coach his son, and Coach Walters, who's done a million camps. This is his first camp. He got to coach his two sons, and to see our guys interact with that gives me a lot of indication of what kind of people they are. So that makes a big deal to me. But Barry, without a doubt, I think a unified voice, not only with our players but our coaches. A great communicator, and that's really that pops out.
You mentioned NIL, and we're getting close to the year anniversary. Just what kind of impact have you seen of that on your team, and maybe as you are pursuing recruits?
It changed the game. I've made this reference a lot of times talking to not only our administration, but in recruiting. Like, in December, we went out and signed a group of high school players, and literally NIL didn't come up. I mean, it came up, but it didn't come up like it was a factor, right? Like, it's fun to talk about. Here's where we're at. But I think in the month of January, when we went on the road on recruiting, it literally became the topic of discussion overnight, right? And now as we enter into this next signing class, where we're at, where we're going to be, a lot of it is NIL education. Like, we can't do things by NCAA rules. You can't induce or entice a current recruit, so you have to be really careful about you don't do anything to violate that principle. But what we can talk about is what our current student athletes are doing, right, and what they've done. Not only here in football, that's why I give Brad Underwood and the success basketball has done. You can talk about what other athletes of premium status have been able to do at the University of Illinois, and that's a huge recruiting tool for us. Because once you're talking about something that's been done, something our current rosters are engaged in. Keith Randolph, I threw it out to you guys early on in the fall. The whole law firm of Randolph and Newton has parlayed into an NIL opportunity for those guys, and that's fun. I think that's the NIL I think we all envisioned, because it not only benefits them, but it also helps ingrain in the community.
With these photo shoots on official visit
Yeah.
weekends, like, how has that changed, and what do you think that means for the week? It seems like a small thing maybe, but I think it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah, I'm not the most photo shoot friendly guy. Our staff really laughs because when I first got here, we would do these photo shoots, and I would be like, come on, like, we're not setting aside an hour for a photo shoot. Well, quickly I learned that it's now an hour and a half or 2 hours, whatever it needs to be, because in today's student athlete, the ones we're recruiting are heavy into it. Now legislation is passed that allows us to do videos, right, do graphics. The people we've assimilated have set the standard in this. Like, there's a lot of times where we're doing things that nobody else has thought of or done, and I go directly to Pat Pearson in combination with Pat Emmleton and his crew. Just it's a display. When kids come on official visits here, there's a DJ popping and guys are walking through. I'm very quick in and out, try to get my photogenic moment, but they live for it, and it's something that if they want it, I want it. Our current players, they love that stuff. When we're out at practice or at conditioning sessions, we have people taking pictures all over the place to make it available for our guys to post on social media because it's what they want. And it's just how the game has changed, and it's more of a coach that needs to learn and adapt to it than fight it and resist it.
Is there an update you feel comfortable giving about Ben right now and his situation?
Ben Miller?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd probably let Ben
Okay.
stay Ben. We're with him every day and think about him all the time, but it's definitely a work in progress.
Coach,
The scheduling realignment talk, does it feel like there's give and gain equally in what you've heard about the possibilities for all the programs in the Big Ten?
You know, I did get boisterous in one meeting, a Big Ten coaches meeting, just that I've got a unique perspective that I played in this league, I was an assistant in this league, I was a coordinator in this league, and I've been a head coach at 2 spots. I believe in this league, I believe in rivalries. I think when people play teams that they're close to, it means a lot to the fans. I think just look at our 2 games this year. We had a big road win at Penn State and a big road win at Minnesota. Penn State, I think, was in the top 10. I think Minnesota was 20. But for us, I felt it, and it was more of a moment at Minnesota because it's a rivalry game, right? It's a team that we've played and competed against. Penn State is a little bit newer to the league, and there's not the same things, although everybody knows who Penn State is. That jumped out to me, right? And I remember when I was at previous institutions, when I was at Wisconsin, and we didn't play Iowa for a number of years, how people always talked about that. I think the natural set borders, that we have in the Big Ten, those build great rivalries. Very unique in the fact that the last championship that was ever won in this league before a championship game, we won. And then we won the first 2 that became championship games. But those were under the leaders and legends, and now it's transitioned to the East and the West. And the game changes, the game's cyclical. Obviously, Ohio State's had their run and what they've been able to do. Michigan changed that narrative last year. So I think to just kind of stand in this league and realize things evolve, and hopefully we're a big part of that. I'm all for containing some of the natural rivalries that exist by geography, but I also understand the need to drive further.
Coach, do you like the way the pre-conference schedule is set up in terms of winnable home games, and how important is it to get out to a fast start?
You can't even say that word, can you? As far as the schedule, I think the schedule lays out the fact that we have 3 games by week, 4 games by week, 5, right? That's a nice balance. One of the reasons I really shot for a week 0 game with Wyoming was because I wanted to get 2 bye weeks. And this allowed us to do that 2 years in a row. I think the more bye weeks we have, the better. I think in the league that we play in, the more recovery we can get our student athletes is a good thing. So I like the way the schedule lays out, not really pertaining to any one particular team where they're at. I just like the fact the balance of 3 bye, 4 bye, 5. Sometimes you'll get these situations where you have 2 bye weeks and they occur 2 times within 4 weeks, and that really doesn't do you any good.
How much does your recruiting process maybe change in the year where you don't necessarily need as many prospects?
I don't think recruiting ever changes, right? Because whether it's a year when you're going to sign 15 or 25, again, that's out the window now with 85. It's more of a traditional question probably in years past. But the portal window, the grad transfers, the 85 scholarship rule, I don't think there's ever a year where you're going to have low numbers. I think everything's always going to have a little bit more balance.
Can I just get one about
Last one.
Yeah.
Sidney Brown?
Sid?
We've heard a lot of good things about him out of spring. What does that look like? What kind of step is he taking?
Well, the D coordinator's
I
coming
know.
next. Sid can answer that. Sid was a little bit of a late arrival. I'll let Ryan discuss that. He had problems at the border, so he was a couple days late coming in, but he's here now. We're all glad to see. But Sidney, like a lot of our seniors, I think going into year 2 with us, they understand the expectation, the demand, the precedence. Sid is one of our better players, right, that returns for a senior year that I think the things that Ryan taught him a year ago, the way our defense plays, I'm looking for a big jump. What I'm excited about Sidney is I don't think he's even close to being satisfied, right? He's a very hungry player, very eager, high football IQ, Him and his brother compete on a daily basis. I think in the back end with Quan, with Spoon, you got some players with a lot of playing experience that know that they did well last year. I think the departure of Kirby, there's that natural feeling about who's going to step in and making those plays. I'm very excited about Sydney for a variety of reasons, and mainly because I think he's going to get coached the right way.